Hello, my students. This is Mr. Moreno. Here's a video on your first draft. I'm calling this Finding Your Pearl. In this video, we'll talk about the prompts, we'll talk about digging deep, we'll talk about pearls, and we will actually suggest some activities for you to do to start your writing. Our purpose here is to figure out what the heck we're going to write about. But first, let's get in the mood for writing.
It's been a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. We've come a long way from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again.
I don't know about you, but that song always seems to get me. Right here, which is a little bit what our personal statements have to be. All right, let's get started with some discussion about the prompts. The UC website has information on the PIQs, the personal insight questions. You're going to be writing 4 of them. I think there's 8 prompts, 350 words, and plenty of information on their website. Even better, pull up your DuckDuckGo or whatever search you use and type in common application, pick a topic, and they got better information than I have. Look, they even have cool tips. I just got music and my ugly face. All right, so what is this? Well, here are the prompts. I'm sure you're familiar with them. 4 tiny essays for the UCs and then 1 longer essay for the Common App. Some topics that I think are really interesting are the ones on educational barriers or opportunities in the community where I work. That is one of the most chosen prompts. I like the one at the end of the UC where you get to consider yourself a gift to your community. What have you given back? What have you done beyond? For the Common App, you have your classic beyond questions where you talk about your background. That's prompt 1. And then the last one also talks about any topic you may want. I really like the failure question and the one about capturing your spirit. And so you have to study those prompts. That's not what this is about. This is more about once you have narrowed down what prompt you're going to want to write about, how do you pick something about your life? All right, let's dig deep. Here's some questions from a handout that I found in Nancy Atwell's book on writing. She calls this Questions for Memoirists. First question, what are my earliest memories? How far back can I remember? That is a little too general, a little too broad. So let's bring it down a little bit. What are some things that have signified something for me? What things have signified for me or have had an important presence in my life? This question here reminds me of the student who wrote about the hammer. I said, well, what do you mean a hammer? He says, well, it represents my dad. He was a carpenter when I was growing up, and that's the symbol. So for him, it was a hammer. He also wrote in there about being the nail and how his father helped shape him and gave him strength. 3, what's something that I've seen that I can't forget? What's something that I've seen that I can't forget? Very, very broad question. Can range from something as wonderful as beauty. What is something so beautiful that you can't forget? It can go into something as difficult as trauma. Next, what's an incident that shows what my family and I are like? An incident reminds me of the student who wrote about waking up early, and they lived in a garage, they had a stove, they had to cook on one of those camping stoves, and it showed a lot about family unity. It showed about some of the issues of poverty that the family faced. Last from this list, I'll be posting the list up for you. What experiences? That's it. What experiences? Birthdays, holidays, shows, sports, movies, texts, performances, family meals. Now, this is Nancy Atwell writing. Family meals. Her, I think she was a teacher in Connecticut. Now, for my students, I might think about some other experiences, maybe camping, going to a pond or a lake, maybe the street scene. What is it like walking to and from school? My favorites would be something about el taquero or el elotero. All right, so some questions for you to think about there. Now, a little aside about oysters. Did you know that oysters have rings? So here's the shell. You can see the layers. According to this chart here, the darker sections show a thicker age ring, and then the white bands here is a slower ring, kind of like trees. Here's a little something I picked up. Did you know that oysters make pearls so they can feel better, maybe about themselves? Okay, what does this have to do with writing? Well, when oysters make pearls, they are grabbing a little piece of sand or debris. It gets stuck in their bodies, and they're going to coat it with this layer. And to me, this is a similar process to what you have to look for on what you need to write for your personal statement. You see, to me, the hard outer shell, that's what everybody sees. If you want to write about something superficial, you can do that. Oftentimes, it doesn't reveal much. It might reveal that you're a student. It might reveal something about you being a son or a daughter. But it doesn't let the personal statement reveal who you are. It doesn't let the admissions officer into your life. So that's one side of it, the outside, the outer shell. There's the reverse side of that. And that would be where students will feel like they need to say everything. It's kind of a TMI situation where a student really, really feels that he or she needs to share things that are really personal and sometimes leave a student vulnerable. How is this similar to the oyster? Well, the oyster has its shell and it's protecting its soft, gooey flesh that's inside. If you've been to a pescadero restaurant for fish and other seafood, you know that's one of those delicacies. It's eaten. People enjoy it very much. And entire food cultures are built around eating oysters. So if you're an oyster, you don't want to be consumed. If you are a writer, you don't want to leave yourself too vulnerable. In my opinion, sometimes personal statements can go the other extreme, which is to reveal too much. So what do we do? Well, I don't want you to block yourself from writing. I don't want you to reveal everything about yourself. I want you to find the oysters in your life. Excuse me, not the oysters. I want you to find the pearls in your life. You're the oyster. I want you to find those things in your life that have shaped you and that you have then done something about. So, there's a before. You're immature, or you haven't turned the corner yet, or it's before that event happened, and then the event happens. In this case, it's the tiny sand. Sometimes it's an organism or a parasite. Ooh, we can talk about that, but let's just stay on here. So once you have an event, you start reacting to it. And your reaction, we hope, is a positive reaction. If you have a bad grade now, how do you improve your grade? If you had a failure, you didn't win the game, what do you do to win the next time? And so what happens after is that part of that pearl where the oyster builds layer after layer after layer of a material called mother of pearl. It is in this process that you create a gorgeous, iridescent material that is the only biologically created gem, I believe. I could be wrong, but it creates iridescence. There's a pearl hanging in jewelry. The jewelry is going to be your essay. The pearl, well, that's already what you've experienced. You're going to wrap it up nice and beautifully. Here's the Wikipedia image of just beautiful pearls. They have different shapes. They're all not all the same. Each one is unique. And so now our job is, where are we going to find these pearls to talk about? All right. What does this mean? What's next? Well, as I said in an earlier video, we have two choices to make. Number one, if you have plenty of time, you have the ability to be able to create multiple drafts, multiple topics. If you don't have the time, you may have to pick a topic that's easier to write about, that is easier to develop. Hey, look, I misspelled it. So, what do I mean? So, if you don't have enough time, pick a topic, start going with it, ignore what I'm about to say. This doesn't apply to you. I had a student one time come and ask me for personal statement work, and we only had about a week. And I couldn't help the student dig too deep, because if I was going to ask the questions that I asked, well, how did that make you feel? I think the essay was about her grandma's death. Even just in our conversation, the student had broken down and started crying. And so very quickly, I realized we don't have time. So I stopped that conversation and I said, look, we can't talk about all the things that happened to you with your grandma, but let's pick this topic and let's write about it, maybe a little bit in a more superficial way. Because I don't want you to vacillate between not sharing anything and then sharing too much. And so the essay came out good. But if we had more time, I would ask the student to write multiple drafts about what happened with grandma, maybe about times with grandma. And I would instruct the student to give it a lot of drafts and spend a couple weeks on it and then come back, and then we'd pick the one that she might have picked, that she would have liked best. So sometimes, not always, there is situations of trauma, and you want to, I say here, if there's trauma, write until it's over. So write. Sometimes writing is catharsis. It's part of the beauty that I talked about in that first video, where I love writing because oftentimes it's very therapeutic. This is not the time for all that in your personal statement, but we can take advantage of this to write about it. And oftentimes, once you write about it, it all gets out. You might not even pick that topic. Sometimes you just need to get it out. You might even pick something else. I don't want to write about grandma anymore. I think we're good. But there is magic about writing. Two things to remember. Number one, your teachers are mandated reporters. So whatever you share, we are obligated by law to report any abuse. And number two, you don't want to submit something that is too raw for the admissions committee to read. An essay that's too vulnerable, too personal. What you're not trying to show all the sadness, you're trying to show how you've grown. And so that's where we need to focus on. All right. If this has helped, great. I have more videos coming. If it hasn't helped, there's a ton more YouTube videos. You don't have to, you can do a thumbs down. But what's next? You should have, in these two videos, have already selected your topic, and you should already have a draft. Now, what do we do with that story? What do we do with that moment? What do we do with that event? What do we do with that pearl? Well, we have to put layer after layer after layer of beauty on it. And so in the next video, we'll talk about shaping your story, framing your story, and ultimately, we're going to make it about a pebble. But more on that in the next video. Here's what we did. We talked a little bit about the prompts. Didn't really get into too much about relationships and events, but we did talk about development, which is that part where you grow and you have to write about that growth. We talked a lot about pearls, and we have some questions for memoirists. Let's go back to the top, and then I have a closing song here for you.
It's been a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. We've come a long way from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you again.
Good luck with your writing, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you next time.